So, today we'll be talking about qualia and consciousness because these two are very much interconnected. I know. I've uploaded twice in 1 week. This is amazing. I've never done this before. Well, it's because of the new format. I'm lazy. So, let's go. Anyways, I think it's important to start off with the definition because, qualia, what does it even mean? You don't even know. It's a quality or a property as perceived or experienced by a person. It's basically subjective experience. It's the pain you feel when getting stuck by a needle, or when you love somebody, maybe your family or your partner. It's the experience when you see red, for example. That's basically qualia. I want you to do a thought experiment with me. So close your eyes, um, or don't. Anyways, this is a very famous one. It's Mary's room. So Mary lives in a room where everything is black and white, and she has a big book that describes everything there is to know about the color red. Finally, she learns everything there is to know about the color red without ever seeing it. Then suddenly the door opens and she goes outside. There's colors everywhere and there's a big red flower. Beautiful. And this is the first time that she sees red. Has she learned something new? I mean, most people would say yes. I would do it at least. This is qualia, the experience of something. There is no amount of objective knowledge that I could tell you about the color red before you could finally experience it. Let's do it the other way around with the zombie thought experiment. Imagine that you were replaced by an exact copy of yourself. We call this the zombie. It will respond to everything as you would respond to something. But this zombie doesn't experience anything. It just reacts. The fact that you can experience this is seen as an argument that qualia exists and makes a tremendous amount of difference in what we perceive to be human. For example, we wouldn't describe the zombie as human, and we would describe us as human because we experience things, if that makes sense. This also gets into a lot of ethical things with AI and computers and everything like that. But that's not the point of this video, maybe in a later video, but not for this one. Anyways, qualia is closely related to consciousness, so I think we should also see the major thoughts about consciousness and explain them a little. So there's two ideas basically, or two very fundamental ideas: monoism and dualism. Dualism was, I think, thought of by René Descartes, but I'm not sure if he's the actual founder of this philosophy. Basically, this says that the mind, so your consciousness and the experiences you get, are separate from the material, so your body. This sounds intuitive because it would explain things like free will and things like consciousness. In his idea, it was basically just the consciousness is something out there, we don't know, it's immaterial, and through the pineal gland in your brain it sends out messages to basically coordinate the meat machine that is your body. It sounds intuitive, but it's not. It gives rise to a lot of problems, like the interaction problem. This basically means that how does immaterial thing affect a physical thing? It doesn't make sense. The causal closure problem with how could something that has no energy because it's immaterial influence something that requires energy to be influenced because of the law of conservation and stuff? Or the brain damage problem. How can For example, if my head gets bashed in and part of my brain doesn't work, how would that influence my consciousness, since that would be separate from my brain? That's why we thought of another route, and that's monoism. This one can be divided up to materialism and idealism. And idealism is basically everything is made up. You're a brain in a vat, or it doesn't necessarily have to mean that, but everything is inside your mind, everything is subjective. I'm not gonna go too far into this because I genuinely disagree with it so much that I can't even explain it or do it justice without sounding very partial, because I don't like this way. It's basically I'm a brain in a vat, so everything can happen and nothing is certain. I don't like that way of thinking. It's not pragmatic. You don't have anything. Doesn't matter. Anyways, materialism. You can have it about eliminative materialism, and that basically says there are no mental states, so qualia is an illusion. Everything happens in the brain, and you have no qualia. It's just neutrons, electrons, neurons firing, doing things. You don't experience anything. This is too radical for most people because human mental states are very important for predicting human behavior. So most psychologists or scientists don't discount this as anything. So that gave rise to the reductionist materialist. It basically said there is room for mental states, so there is room for qualia, but it is experienced in certain part of the brains, and it is material. But this runs into the identity problem. So basically, what happens if, for example, your visual cortex gets bashed in, it doesn't work anymore, then the place where your brain activity gave rise to a certain sensation, so red for example, will travel to another place in the brain because of neuroplasticity, to compensate for the lost function, and that makes sure that because there's a different brain area responsible for the same experience, it no longer can map onto each other, which reductive materialism says. Every experience can be mapped onto another brain, and that is no longer possible with plasticity. So that gave rise to non-reductive materialism. That's basically saying there are mental states and there is experience. It happens somewhere in the brain. We don't know where and we don't know how. It sounds like a shit theory. It is, but it is what most scientists ascribe to. If anything more plausible or remotely plausible at all and simpler comes along, it would immediately be preferred over this because it's just so general of a theory. But it's the only one that really works. And these people claim the functionalist approach as well. This says information is not dependent on the material of the brain, but merely of the functioning of the brain, like a computer program on a computer. And this analogy poses a problem because there is this another thought experiment where you have a Chinese room, I think that's the name of it, and let's say you're in a big cube, you're a computer, and you have a big book of all the Chinese characters, and through a little lid you get a little Chinese note with a Chinese sign on it. You check the sign, you go to the book, you look at the corresponding sign. So it basically says, if you get this sign, you output this, and you check and you pick you draw the little sign that you have to send that corresponds with the one you got in, and you send it out, and congratulations, you've just become a computer. The problem is you don't experience you don't understand and experience the language that you just put out. We experience something, but according to the functionalist approach, the computer should experience it as well. But as is illustrated with the Chinese room idea, you wouldn't really experience anything, if that makes sense. I would also add to this the famous paper of Thomas Nagel, What is it like to be a bat? In this paper he explains that we can't ever know what it is like to be a bat, because we don't have the capacity for this. Basically, we could never imagine what it is like to have such limited mental capacities or function and navigate the world with just sound and echolocation, because we can only know objective knowledge about it, like the girl with the book about the red, but we could never experience it since we don't have the capabilities for this. So we could never imagine a qualia, and this gives another distinction between the qualia and the objective, if that makes sense. And you could also relate this to the Chinese room. It's all interconnected, so if you see any parallels, it's because it's just one subject. So I hope you see any parallels. You should. Lastly, I'll illustrate how closely consciousness and qualia are related to each other. They're even part of the same bigger problem. So qualia is part of the problem of consciousness, as described by David Chalmer. He described the hard problem and the easy problem of consciousness. The easy problem is describing the experiences and the processes of the mind, which, as we've illustrated before with the Chinese room and Mary and the zombie experiments, is already not easy at all, but it's the easy part of it. And then the hard problem of consciousness is why processes are really accompanied by experience, because there's no real reason for it to, right? I mean, we don't know, but that's basically the harder problem. It goes way deeper into it, and we don't know. We have no answer to both of them. Anyways, I could be going on and on and on and on and on, but I don't feel like it, because it would be too long, and I don't want to make too long of a video. And maybe if I ever get interested in a subject again, I'll revisit it and look more at the ethics side of it, maybe the biology of things, the computers, the different side of it. Let me know if you want me to. If you don't, that's fine. Anyways, that's basically the idea of it. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a good day.